Today we are gonna go over purposes and functions of a test. And here are my sources. And this is gonna be great because I don't know if you're gonna use your microphone, but you have a whole minute. All right. Think back to your high school days when what were some of the factors that turned you off about tests? I could list a few, but you have a minute only, so. Uh, all right. Let's see what you have here. I totally love your voice, by the way. You should use your voice more. I wish we have like a radio station, right? You know how some colleges have radio station? Man, you could totally be a DJ. And now for our next song. All right.
I think something that really turned me off about tests was that it took all day usually to take them. At least like the standardized ones. Regular tests, they were easier because I could actually study for them. That's another thing. Like I wasn't able to study for them for like standardized tests. It was just like use the knowledge you have. I didn't like that. I'd rather be told what the material was and then be able to study for it. But I guess standardized tests are different. They're just measuring, usual stuff. But yeah, that's just something that really turned me off about tests. I actually had not a professor, a teacher once who helped us by giving us snacks in the mornings before like standardized tests. So that was fun.
That is an awesome idea. I always tell my students that, especially if you work in a school district that has a low socioeconomic status as far as the neighborhood. And yeah, go to Costco, get a bunch of granola bars, some power foods, and yeah, get them going. Some of these kids, they don't get breakfast at home and they're too embarrassed to apply for the free meals at school. So yeah, always have those snacks, share it with them, and that's awesome. Yeah, standardized test you can't really study. It's if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. So but yeah, and a lot of schools put so much stress over that because that's how they get their funds, and so it's nerve-wracking for students, teachers, administrators, and in a way for parents. So yeah, during springtime too, it's like, all right, good answer. All right, okay, there's only one of you. uh Activity, I forgot what. Oh yeah, this is a fun activity.
I was really tempted to choose a crowbar for all of them.
It's a handy dandy tool. All right, I take it you're finished. Yeah. Oh man, the timer is stripping me. All right. Oops. All right. Ah, okay. Never mind. I got it. I got it. I messed it up. Anyways, that is the weirdest thing. Anyways, I think you have the idea of that whole game is
It shows
like,
me on my screen. It's a little weird because it shows me like my answers and the right ones.
yeah, they're both correct. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. Anyways, the whole idea is that every test has its function. So like every tool has its function. So it feels like you're taking so many tests when you're in K to 12, and it's because they are satisfying different functions, therefore fulfilling different stakeholders' needs. And we'll go over that more. But yeah. All right. I'm just tempted to wait and see what happens after this whole timing thing because I'm hoping it shows me something. Nope, it doesn't. It just shows this. All right. Well, that's awesome. You got it. All right. So I am going to play this. And there you go.
So when we think about different types of assessments, I want to go through this list in a bit more detail. Screening assessments is kind of where we start at the beginning, right? Typically, these are relatively short assessments designed to identify if more detailed assessment is needed, or is this a student who's likely to need intervention or be at risk for some kind of deficiency. So we do an initial screening that might help inform or raise a flag for a particular student or group of students who are struggling on a particular topic. We also look at assessments from a diagnostic lens, and that really can be defined in two different ways. First, in the classroom, a diagnostic test will often precede instruction, and it's used to check students' prior knowledge and skill levels to inform the instructor about where students are starting, and it helps to guide teacher planning and determine what instruction needs to happen next. Normally, those results are often not graded. They're not evaluative because they're serving a diagnostic purpose. It's just informing our starting point because we know we have to build from there. Diagnostic assessments can also be used in a different way, which is really the more medical definition of a diagnosis, right? To help identify students' strengths and weaknesses, to dig in and get more information about areas in need of improvement, and to inform next steps for intervention for students. A different purpose for assessment is placement. So placement assessments are often used to determine where students need to enter into in terms of their entry point in the education system. It can be used to determine an instructional level or whether a student needs inclusion in a particular education program. So we might use a placement assessment to determine if a student needs a particular resource or intervention strategy. It also can be used to determine which level of entry a student should be going into. For example, does that student really belong in grade 4 or grade 5 based on where they are in terms of their skills? And they're even used for college entrance. Placement tests are used to determine if students need remedial coursework at the college level, or placements can be used by employers. Placement tests can be used by employers to help determine where a candidate should be fit into the employee pool. Interim assessments are used, administered typically at intervals between instructional periods that help teachers better understand what a student knows at that point in the curriculum and in the school year, but also what they need. Are they lacking any prerequisite skills or knowledge, and what they're going to be ready for next? It also can help determine progress towards learning goals and measure growth. And it also can help teachers identify patterns or trends for a group of students. Summative assessment, however, is a little bit different. Summative assessments are typically given once at the end of a longer period of instruction. They're typically large-scale assessments, can be given statewide or nationally, but they also could be district-wide or reference end of semester or end of unit assessments. They're typically used to evaluate performance against a defined set of content standards and to measure and report on overall achievement at a given point. Next, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about formative assessment. Formative assessment is something we hear a lot about, and sometimes that term is used for benchmark or interim assessments, but it's not the same thing. Formative assessments can be both formal assessments or informal practices in the classroom that are used by teachers in the learning process, so right in time during learning, so that they can get feedback about students' understanding and modify their teaching and learning activities to improve instruction and their students' achievement of particular content. Formative assessment typically occurs moment to moment as part of the instruction, and it's a process that's used by teachers and students more frequently. It can be used daily, even multiple times during the school day, or weekly by teachers. So they're considered what we call short cycle assessments. Before we go into a little bit more detail about classroom assessments and different cycle assessments, I wanted to talk briefly about norm referenced assessments versus criterion referenced assessments. So norm referenced assessments is not a particular assessment type, but it is a reference point for interpretation. What it's talking about is that your results are reported in comparison to similar students who've taken the assessment previously. And your performance on that assessment is interpreted relative to a particular norm group. Often that is students at the same grade level. It may be students at the same grade level, but also the same instructional point in the school year. And with a norm referenced assessment, those tests will yield a percentile rank. It can be a national percentile rank when your norm group is the nation. It also could be a district-based percentile rank, but it's a comparative indicator of how that student performed compared to his or her peers in that norm group. Criterion referenced assessments, on the other hand, again, it's not a particular assessment, but it's a reference point for interpretation. And assessments that are criterion referenced are looking to report results in comparison to an absolute standard without regard to how other students perform. So on a norm reference test.
Okay. I had to cut her off. Her movie was like long. Okay, so you sort of got those little kinds of assessments, and this is why we take a lot of tests in K to 12. There's just so many kinds of different purposes, objectives, who you report it to. Formative is mostly for the teacher, parents, principal. You get to the other bigger high stakes tests. It's not just the principal, it's the superintendent of the district, it's the state, it's federal. I mean, everybody just knows how you're doing. So, any questions? Perfect. All right. Hopefully this is a lot more fun than the other one, but let's go.
Assessments in education. There are various types of assessment, and here are your top examples. First up, formative assessments. Used during the teaching process, and it's a quick check for understanding. Some examples include thumbs up, thumbs down, brainstorming. Summative assessments. Summative assessments measure long-term academic goals, and they can be used for grading mostly. Examples include PARC, midterms, finals, unit tests, and projects. Next up, diagnostic assessments. They are used to get prior knowledge on students and to plan future instruction. An example would be a pre-course test. Formal assessments, strict and specific testing procedures and rules. One example would be a standardized test such as the SAT. Informal assessments. They are assessments that lack supporting data and use normal classroom testing procedures. An exit ticket would be an example. Behavioral assessments may sound unusual for some teachers, but in special education, behavioral assessments are very common. The best example is a functional behavioral assessment. Next up, rating scales. Ask students to gauge their understanding on a subject or a topic by giving a scaled score. Rating scales are often used for professor evaluations. Emotional assessments. These are used for more emotionally disturbed students and are often written simply as observations. Examples include checklists and student questionnaires. Screening. Screening is usually used to identify students in danger of failing. Screening is found in RTI, which is a response to intervention, and it's becoming more and more popular. Authentic assessments. They are assessments designed to take place in an authentic setting. Like a speech to a large crowd would be an example of an authentic assessment for a public speaking class. Next up, performance-based assessments. They assess students' ability to complete work in an academic-related task, a task. An example would be to have a student create an application for a computer programming class. You can also alter the way you administer an assessment, whether it be individual or group. Sometimes students need the space. Also, IEPs often require individualized testing for students. Next, criterion reference test, CRTs. Students are graded based on the amount of content they have mastered. CRT tests are usually created by teachers and used as simple classroom assessments. And lastly, norm reference assessments. This assessment, on the other hand, is based on a comparison of students against similar demographics. Right now, I just want to say thank you for your time and please subscribe to this channel.
All right. Does that help with all this terminology? Because sometimes it just gets too much because there's just so much there. All right. This is fun. This is a fun activity that I always use. So let's get started. Basically, if you think of formative assessments, it's low stake, right? It's just like, you know, discussions or just group work, nothing to be nervous about, teamwork or anything like that. So it's low stakes. And so what I asked my students, and I remember last spring, I asked them to pick different images that portray formative assessment. It could also portray your feelings about formative assessment. It could also portray whatever comes to your mind when you think about formative assessment. I don't know if you remember Lani Mafucci. Okay, she took this class a year ago, and she put there like the cast from Friends hugging. And so I said, how is that formative assessment? It's group hug. It's because it's group work. So think of all kinds of creative ways they could do on this board. So I'm going to get it started for you. And I think you can just pick whatever pictures that is available for you. And the key is to use the key terms. Use the right key terms. All right. Awesome. Thank you. I love the exit ticket. What other formative assessments? Oh, look at that. I've never seen that before. That is so awesome. All right. Do you remember when you were doing math in K to 12? Did you have those small whiteboards? Okay, that's also formative assessment because the teacher will ask you and you guys will go like this, right? I love that. I wish we could do that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, I wish I could. You know what? Next semester, when we're all in the campus, I know you probably graduated by then, married and everything. I think I can afford just like a dozen of those. That'd be so cool. All right, never mind. Just that. Awesome exit tickets. I love those. Just the name exit ticket is just exciting. It's like, ooh. All right. Oh, now this one is summative assessment. The same thing. All right. Just think of ideas. I remember last year they were able to use Google Docs. And so they were able to put in Jiffies. So they had Bart Simpson collapsing because he was going to take a test. So that's summative. So whatever that comes to your mind about summative is more high stakes, SAT, final exam, midterm exam, in which there's a lot of stake in it. So, yep, go for it, Gabby. Oh, I just want to see what that is. Oh, okay. Oh boy. Yes, it is stressful, isn't it? Oh gosh. Yes, that is summative. All right, you got the idea, you got the emotions, everything. Perfect. All right, let's get going here. So this is bullseye. Everybody knows bullseye means it's gonna be in the test, probably in midterm. Yeah, and probably in final exam. So like other tools, tests have been designed for many specific measurement purposes. Okay. All right, purpose. They vary from situation to situation. When looking for a test that matches your purpose, ask yourself, why am I testing? Do I want to know about students' mastery of specific curriculum, course, or unit, or do I want to know about their general language skills? In college, professors ask themselves, why am I testing? It's probably because they want to show the students that they've met the course learning outcomes. So those course learning outcomes are important for us. Often teachers, administrators, and parents want to know information about specific skills that students should be developing, such as reading ability or cultural knowledge. It is important to choose a test that focuses on the skill that you want to know about. For example, if you want to find out about a student's communicative language ability, a test of only reading and writing may not be enough. So probably a speech of some sort, some kind of drama, a skit, something, video presentation, PowerPoint video, PowerPoint with your voice narration, those kinds of stuff. All right. Let's get going here. 13 out of 18 slides. Man, you are fast today, Gabby. All right. I love these guys, teachings in education. And you know, it took me a while to realize why there's a tie there, teachings in education. Like, okay, I got it.
Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education, the purpose of assessments. So, what is the overall goal of using assessments? Educators must use assessments as a tool to improve instruction. Improving student learning will always be the primary goal of assessments. It must be used formatively to pinpoint when students become lost. When students are lost, teachers can intervene through assessments. Teachers can decide to reteach, move on, or change teaching strategies. Now, on a larger scale, assessments are used for evaluation as well, which is different. Assessments still evaluate whether or not students are learning to read, write, and do math. When it comes to standardized testing, they serve the purpose of identifying gaps within an entire school or a classroom. So assessments can identify deficits in both the classroom and schools as well. It's always important in both life and in education that we learn from our mistakes. And teachers should want to show students that hard work pays off. Assessments provide intrinsic motivation and a payoff for studying very hard.
All right. So yes, assessments usually to improve student learning. So it's not just to be mean to students. You know, when I was a little girl, I think I had a really mean teacher, like fourth grade teacher. And I just felt like she was mean because she's giving all these tests. You know, I didn't have an idea that there was a purpose for each test and that, you know, she wants to know where the gaps are and all that. I just thought she's mean, you know. All right. All right. Okay. I like this one too. I like all my videos.
Assessment is all around us. If you're a skater at a skate park, you're engaging in self-assessment every time you reflect on your progress and plan your next steps. If you're a runner training for a marathon, you look at time splits and compare it to your goals. If you're a musician, you're engaging in assessment every time you listen to yourself play and make modifications to your approach. As an author, you engage in self assessment when you revise your work. And it's not always individual. Often, assessment will happen in community. If you're a chef, you're engaging in peer assessment when you ask a trusted fellow chef, how does this taste? If you're an artist, you might ask for an extra set of eyes on a particular project. If you're an engineer, you might observe users to see if your design is working. And if you do any kind of creative work, both self assessment and peer assessment are vital for improving your craft. It helps you refine your process and helps you improve your products. Assessment helps us figure out what we know, what we don't know, and what steps we need to take in the future to master a skill or understand a concept at a deeper level. Okay, but what does this mean in the classroom? Well, it starts with self assessment. Here, students engage in goal setting, where they set goals, plan their approach, and keep track of the progress. They also engage in self reflections. Here, they can reflect on the learning process, but also focus on the strengths and weaknesses of their products, which then leads to new iterations. A similar option is a student survey with multiple choice, checkboxes, and Likert scales. In some cases, students might use a self-assessment rubric. Students are able to look at the progression from emerging to mastery with specific descriptions in various categories. They are able to gain an accurate view on what they are doing while also having a clear picture of where they need to be. Students might also use checklists. These can be a powerful diagnostic tool that students use before, during, and after a specific task. When projects are done, they can present their work in a portfolio where they reflect on what they've learned. Peer assessment is also important. One option is the 10-minute peer feedback system. This begins with one student sharing their work or pitching an idea while the other student actively listens. It then moves to a chance to ask clarifying questions, get feedback, respond to feedback, and chart out your next steps. Another option is structured feedback with sentence stems. This is especially helpful for ELL students. Or you could use the 3-2-1 structure. Now, this is simple. Students provide 3 strengths, 2 areas of improvement, and 1 question that they still have. Another option is the peer feedback carousel. Here, each group has a stack of sticky notes, and they offer anonymous feedback as they move from group to group to group. Or you could keep it more open-ended with peer coaching. Students interview each other about the process, they guide reflection, and they provide feedback. Now, we often think of classroom assessment as a conversation between teachers and students. But in life, students won't always have a teacher to grade their work or give them necessary feedback. And this is why we need self-assessment and peer assessment every day. The more we can integrate this into our lessons, the better prepared students will be for the creative life.
All right. So yeah. Let's see here. We're always self-assessing ourselves. As a student, you're always like trying to get your writing of your academic papers improve each time. You're in your final year, so you probably have a lot of practice doing it. So, and you're in drama, you are a performing art, so you're always assessing yourself, right? You're always probably asking feedback from your other drama peers and stuff like that. And as a teacher, that doesn't stop. You will have a principal or a teacher mentor who's going to be observing your class every once in a while. We do it too at Life Pacific. We go to each other's classroom. We give each other peer assessments. In Zoom, I watch people Zoom and give each other feedback. So we learn from each other. So yeah, we are always assessing ourselves. Just because you leave school doesn't mean assessment stops. It just keeps going if you want to improve in everything. All right. So here's an activity. This is a scenario And you have a minute and half an hour. Go for it, Gabby. Woohoo! All right. Let's see.
Personally, I would respond that not all tests are the same and equally useful. If it hasn't been like tested against other students, or if it hasn't been tested against like a norm group, I would probably try to avoid using that. We really don't want to just say, oh, every test is equally useful when not all of them are. Sometimes you'll like a standardized test versus like a formative test. They measure different things, and some of them are a little bit. The formative tests, I think, are a bit easier for students to handle than like a summative test. So I would probably respond to the teacher, oh, maybe not, but we'll work on it.
Awesome. Okay, you realize I just did a formative test there, right? I just wanted to know if you got everything from all the stuff that we watch. All right, perfect. Also, the time to climb that we do, that's a formative test. So yeah, you got it, Gabby. You tell that teacher she's wrong. All right. 6. Oh, okay. I didn't do this last year. I was like, how do I do it? You know, it's COVID and everything. So I'm not really gonna count your words but the Twitter they limit you in with 280 words. I don't know if you have a Twitter account. I kind of gave up on mine. So use a Word document or whatever, or you could just type whatever, but it's not an audio thing. Yeah, type something that responds to this. Is a Twitter feed post, whatever. I give you 5 minutes. My goodness. All right. Let's go see your post, tweet, or whatever that is. All right. From this class, I've learned more about what different tests are and how each test is different. I've learned, oh, I should let you read your post. Sorry.
Okay. From this class, I've learned more about what different tests are and how each test is different. I've learned that not all tests are created equally, and my favorite type of test is a formative test.
Woo!
And last class, I learned different words and definitions that pertain to the world of assessments.
Woohoo! Oh, this is so much fun. All right. Thank you for that. That is awesome. All right, man. This is a really short class. All right, what's next? All right, time to climb. Woo! Okay.
You know, Professor, I really think that I'm going to get first this time.
You know, I am praying right now that you do first because Gabby, it's been rough night last night for you. And I want you to get that, working really hard. All right. Now, as a bonus, you get to pick where we go.
Himalayas.
Woo! All right. What's the other one? Oh, okay. All right. Let's get going. There she is.